Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to another timeline, another life. Our review retrospective on David Warner's Unbound Doctor. Before we begin, apologies. I seem to be coming down with a summer cold at the time of recording this. I've been sniffly all day, and in the last few hours, I started becoming prone to coughing fits. I don't know if it's affected my voice yet. I'll find that out in the playback when I'm editing. But just know that that's what's going on with me, so I might not be at my A game. Anyway, today we are looking at The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield, Volume 4, Ruler of the Universe. Released in September 2017, directed by Scott Hancock. Ruler of the Universe stars Lisa Bowerman as Bernice Summerfield, David Warner as the Doctor, and Mark Gatiss as the Master. As always, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place because I do these unscripted, so if you do not wish to be spoiled, in the description box below is the link to Big Finish's website where you can purchase The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield Volume 4, Ruler of the Universe. This set consists of 4 stories, and because this was around the time where Big Finish was starting to change how they put out their box sets for physical release, this is the last set in this series to feature individual covers for their stories. Anyway, those stories are The City and the Clock by Guy Adams, Asking for a Friend by James Goss, Truant by Guy Adams, and The True Savior of the Universe by James Goss. If I was to do story ranking for these, it's a really close call because this is a fairly consistent set. I'll get to my overview thoughts in a moment. I would rank these, Truant is the weakest, and then for number 3 and number 2, it's kind of a tie. I constantly go back and forth. So I think at the moment I'm going to say number 3 is The True Savior of the Universe. Number 2 is The City and the Clock. And then number 1, my favorite story of this set, is Asking for a Friend. As you know, I kind of give my thoughts in review while recapping the plot of the set overall and the set of the stories, but I'm going to ask you to hold on because I'm going to do something different. Even though it's the second story in the set, I'm going to talk about Asking for a Friend last, because if I'm being honest, a little bit of spoilers for further down the line, Asking for a Friend is a masterpiece. This set is fairly solid overall, but it's got 3 good stories with just 1 magnificent standout. Anyway, so let's get into this set overall. Like I said, just right there, and what I wanted to do, Ruler of the Universe, from memory, is kind of the standout so far. It is the peak of the Warner Doctor's appearances. Like I said, Asking for a Friend is magnificent, but the other 3 stories are all really good. I do want to say, too, this was around the time I first listened to The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield. And at the time I listened, Volume 4 was the most recent release. After this, I hadn't heard the new releases. So I hadn't heard Volume 5, 6, or 7. So I don't know if that's going to change my opinion or what my thoughts on those sets are. Compared to The Unbound Universe and Ruler of the Universe, I already knew going into this what my thoughts were because I already listened to those sets. Anyway, the premise of Ruler of the Universe. As I kind of mentioned when I reviewed The Unbound Universe, this version of the universe has kind of seen its own version of the Time War called the Great War, and the events of that war led the Doctor to becoming the ruler of the universe. This time around, in this set, he is being called upon to serve in his position. He is the president of the universe. And he kind of absolutely hates it, which I'll get into in a minute, but listening to these sets again, I kind of made a comparison. So, the Unbound Universe and Ruler of the Universe focus on a Doctor who, after the events of the Time War, as the presumed last of the Time Lords, because in this universe we actually know the Master is also alive, he is put into sort of a position of great power or divine authority, so to speak. But only this time, we know the Doctor absolutely hates it. The Doctor's not an authority figure. He's a rebel. He's an adventurer. So he saves the universe in his own way. He doesn't want to be restrained by bureaucracy and red tape. He doesn't want to do it officially. So, these two sets, again, The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield, Volume 3 and Volume 4, they do the story arc of the 10th Doctor era way better than the 10th Doctor era. Granted, that's not a high bar given how awful the 10th Doctor is, but it's just, I could not help making that comparison. So that kind of also gives us our insight, in particular here, into the Warner Doctor. He now is being called upon to be president of the universe, to be the ruler of the universe. And he hates it. He hates now being restrained by bureaucracy and red tape. He hates having to go through official channels to try and do anything, because now when he says, I want to save a planet, Parliament has to vote on it, and they could take too long, or they could vote against him. But then when the destruction happens, and when the planet can't be saved, again, because of the actions of the Parliament, be it their inaction by tedious debate or just voting not to help, they then turn and look upon the Doctor, blaming him for the planet not being saved. And it all weighs on him. It weighs on him really heavily because he knows he can do more. He wants to do more, but he is being prevented from doing so. It's kind of like that Lex Luthor quote from Justice League Unlimited. This is a weird comparison to make, but one of the superheroes in that show, The Question, begins unearthing this strange conspiracy surrounding Lex Luthor. He believes it's a whole thing I'm not going to recount, but basically he believes Lex Luthor is trying to make himself president of the United States. And Lex's response is, when he's confronted, do you realize how much power I'd have to give up to become president? It kind of feels like that with the Doctor in a way, seeing him now, what he's had to give up, what he can't do now as ruler of the universe. So now we will break into the stories themselves. No, I'll talk about that with the story. Whoops. The City in the Clock, our first story. So, over the past several months, the Doctor's heard whispers of a mysterious device called the Apocalypse Clock. And of course, he sends Bernice, who is an archaeologist, to try and find it and unearth it, believing it could save the universe. In the gap of time between Volume 3 and Volume 4, in world, not production-wise, not between releases, it seems the destruction of the universe has been expedited. So now the Doctor is desperately searching for a way to try and stave off the entropy that is facing the Unbound universe. And let me skip ahead to the end here, because this is going to be kind of one of the overarching plot threads of the series. They unearth the Apocalypse Clock, but they find out that but there's a series of equations called Apocalypse equations that the Doctor has to solve to get it activated. But because the energy of the clock is not limitless, the best he can do is establish a safe zone, a finite area of space that will be protected against the rest of the destruction of the universe. So, not a perfect solution, obviously. But it's interesting because this first story, too, shows what being president of the universe, the strain that's putting on the Doctor's relationship with Bernice. David Warner and Lisa Bowerman are once again absolutely fantastic as a pairing. They have a great chemistry, and their performances similarly are also showing what these new roles, what this new position is doing to the Doctor-companion dynamic. You know, Bernice, I wanted to call her by her actress's name, is so close to unearthing the Apocalypse Clock. She wants the Doctor to be there when it happens, because that's something her and the Doctor would have done. But the only reason the Doctor can come is because, like, a meeting got canceled, or he finished paperwork or something to that effect. ahead of schedule, so he has free time. And similarly, he's mad because his flight back home, back to his office, has been delayed, so he's stuck overnight. The spark in this particular doctor is gone. And in fact, and their dynamic continues to strain and worsen over the events of the story. Like, when Bernice is continuing to express her thoughts on the clock, her fear, her desires, the doctor says, "Oh, I had to deal with something with an ambassador because the plumbing in the ambassador's quarters isn't working," and Bernice has finally had enough. She kicks him out of her tent. And, also another spoiler for the end here, the doctor didn't actually believe the apocalypse clock existed. He hoped, but he didn't believe. So really what he did when he learned, oh, there may be a way to save the universe, is he sent Benny to find the clock as a PR stunt. And obviously that enrages her. In fact, that's how the story ends, with the doctor and Benny having an argument. He says, I miss the old days too. I'm still the doctor. And the story ends on Benny going, "No, you're not. Not anymore." And that leads into asking for a friend, which we're putting on the back burner right now, before we coming back to at the end. So that leads us to our third story, Truant, which I said is the weakest story in the set. And I stand by that because it's the most basic. In what the Unbound universe is kind of doing, and this very unique doctor-companion relationship we're seeing, Truant just plays like a typical Doctor Who story almost. The opening sequence, the pre-credit sequence, cold open, that's the phrase. The cold open is the most interesting part of it, The Doctor is now shirking and kind of abandoning his responsibilities as president to try and go adventuring like he did in the old days. The problem is, the Doctor is the president of the universe, which means he's pretty well known now. So everywhere he goes, trying to stop alien invasions or civil wars or, tyrannical rulers, every time he shows up, they're like, everyone just gives up and surrenders because they know who the Doctor is now. Like I said, this cold open is the most interesting part of the story. But I can also see why it's not the entire story, because this scenario, continuing to do this, would get kind of repetitive. But instead, the Doctor and Benny, because Benny is looking for him, kind of hunting him down to get back to work, they accidentally stumble into kind of an alien invasion. Like I said, this just plays out like a typical Doctor Who story. There is some interesting looking into the Doctor's character here, particularly his flaws. So, the planet Doctor and Benny are on, they kind of find out a parasitic race has taken it over, a la Invasion of the Body Snatchers. In fact, they make several allusions to and directly reference Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But the problem is, this happened like 60 years in the past. So, the citizens of this planet are the descendants of the original invaders. And we can see the descendants condemn the actions of their ancestors, but they point out that it's over and done with. There's nothing we can do. What our ancestors did was despicable, but these are our people. We have to look out for their best interests. And despite that, the Doctor still sees them as the villains. So the cold open is really good, and the conclusion is really good, because the conclusion really highlights the Doctor's flaws. He wants to still be the hero he used to be, that wild, rebellious adventurer, but not only can he, because he's a bureaucrat now, but also it's bringing to light many of his flaws in his old style. It's a very morally great depiction of the Doctor. And of course, finally returning to continue his duties, we end with the Doctor being arrested, which leads to the true savior of the universe. And Benny is forced to team up with the Master. Similarly to David Warner, Lisa Bowerman and Mark Gatiss have great chemistry. I love how flirty the Master is with Benny, and it still does kind of make me kind of bummed that the Master is playing to his own agenda and he's not being genuine, because it is played that well. But, excuse me, to save us a bunch of time, because I really want to get to asking for a friend, I will reveal what's going on. The true savior of the universe, I should mention this too, throughout this set as well, there's also been a mysterious figure approaching the members of Parliament, trying to bribe them and convince them to vote against the Doctor, which of course leads to his impeachment, which leads to Parliament, of all things, voting for the Master to replace him, so that the Master can solve the apocalypse equations, activate the apocalypse clock, and save the universe. So this story, shows off the more manipulator side of the Doctor, a la Patrick Troughton or Sylvester McCoy. A la Patrick Troughton or Sylvester McCoy. It shows the grand schemer side of the Doctor, because this whole impeachment was a scheme engineered by the Doctor. He created the android to convince people to vote against him. He kind of rigged things against his favor so that he would be removed from power. And he made it so that the Master would seem like an appealing alternative, even framing the Master so it looked like he was the one manipulating events. Also, that when the apocalypse clock is activated, in some of the outpouring of energy in the activation of the safe zone, the Doctor could use it to power his TARDIS and take Benny home. This set ends with the Doctor and Benny back in Benny's universe, the main universe, the prime universe, the universe the show takes in, the universe we as viewers watch. Benny is back home in her universe, and the Unbound Doctor is now with her. And also the cruel irony of it, the Doctor gave the Master what he wanted. He rules the universe now. And all the responsibility that entails. So now it's finally time to talk about asking for a friend. The clear standout of this set. 3 phenomenally strong stories, and this one masterpiece. So after the deterioration of the Doctor and Benny's relationship in The City and the Clock, and implied other instances leading up to The City and the Clock, the Doctor, or Benny more accurately, decides it's time for the Doctor to get therapy. This set is essentially a 2 or 3 person play, or a 2-person play with flashbacks. So, the Doctor will talk to his therapist, played by Annette Badland, and as he does, we will also get flashbacks looking into what happened. Some of the events, some of the things he had to do, and some of the events he witnessed. Bernice being furious that the Doctor had to be buddy-buddy with a known insane dictator, because the dictator's planet was the only source of a mineral wealth that the universe needed, because all the other planets were wiped out. And the Doctor wanted to do this with as little death as possible, which is why he didn't just send his armies as president of the universe in to take over the planet. Or similarly, in a session where the Doctor the Doctor recalls the memories he lost of the Great War and how he turned his back on the Time Lords. Or one particularly brutal scene where the people of a planet are begging the Doctor for help, and he mutes the call and tells Bernice he can't help them. And he uses the speed of light metaphor, how light from the stars are coming, how when we look at the night and see starlight, that light is coming from stars so far away that by the time we see them, the star is already dead. And he says the people of this planet are dead They just don't know it yet. And that's where a lot of what I've been saying has come. The Doctor can't do what he used to do anymore. He is so restrained by bureaucracy. He goes into this heartbreaking monologue about how the Parliament will do nothing. They'll debate, they'll vote, but they won't actually do anything. And when it's too late, they will look at the Doctor, giving him all the blame, showing what this responsibility is doing to him. This is a really, even though this is not the main Doctor we follow in the series, this is a parallel universe Doctor. This is such an interesting deep dive into the Doctor's psyche, into what makes the Doctor tick, including what he does to his therapist. And and I have been spoiling this set left and right. This is your last warning, because this is heavy and it works so much better if you don't know what's going on going in. So, at the start of their sessions together, the Doctor is very aloof, giving monosyllabic answers to his therapist's questions, and just kind of being cold and cut off. But as they keep visiting, the Doctor slowly opens up, and in turn, he gets his therapist to open up to him. And she tells him stories about how, when her planet was being evacuated, her and her fiancé were on different escape ships, and her fiancé's was killed. And she never met anyone else after that. But as their sessions go on, her and the Doctor talk about her family and her kids. And at the end, it culminates in just another brilliant, heartbreaking scene where the therapist reveals she had some sort of time-proof shielding installed so that she could know when the Doctor was trying to use time travel to cheat her sessions. Because in an earlier instance, this is unimportant, he went to the future for a session and then came back to the past and gave answers that would set up to that future. She found out that the Doctor changed her entire life, and it causes her, instead of seeing it as a good thing, she has her fiancé back, her husband, she has a family now, she has this whole life. But all it does is cause an existential crisis because she does not know who she is anymore. Kind of just a perfect statement of how the Doctor's good deeds, especially in this time as president of the universe, always get twisted into something horrible. Ruler of the universe, like I said, from memory, is the shining is the jewel in the crown of the David Warner sets. Like I said, after this, we will be going in completely blind, so I don't know what's coming, but if anything, the first four sets alone, Sympathy for the Devil, Masters of War, The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield, Volume 3, The Unbound Universe, and Volume 4, Ruler of the Universe, make a great miniseries. And had the series not gone on after this, like it hadn't for a few years, this would have been a great ending. But I'm so glad it got to go on and we got more of Benny and the Doctor. Excuse me. But those are just my thoughts. Have you listened to The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield, Volume 4, Ruler of the Universe yet? What are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload, and in the description box below you'll find the link to my socials where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time. We'll be taking a detour from The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield and looking at something a little different. Next time, we'll be celebrating Bernice Summerfield's 20th anniversary with Bernice Summerfield, The Story So Far, Volume 2.